Before we get into exemptions, we'll look at the point main residence. The main residence is a term that you will not find defined in the legislation specifically. So the main residence is an exemption that applies to the sale or disposal of a dwelling. When you look at sections 118 through 110, it states that this only applies to individuals, so the main residence exemption is unavailable for trusts, companies, and super funds. That's a very specific exemption for individuals only, and the other key concept. A dwelling is considered to be your main residence if you and your family live in it, your personal belongings are in it, it's the address your mail is delivered to, it is your address on the electoral roll, services such as gas and power are connected. The length of time you stay in the dwelling and whether you intend to occupy it as your home may also be relevant. To be your main residence, your property must have a dwelling on it and you must have lived in it. You're not entitled to the exemption for a vacant block. A dwelling is anything used wholly or mainly for residential accommodation, such as a house or cottage, an apartment or flat, a strata title unit, a unit in retirement village, a caravan, houseboat, or other mobile homes. We're concerned with post-CGT ownership. If you've got a dwelling that was acquired pre-CGT, you're not interested in the main residence exemption, provided nothing happened to that ownership post 20th of September 85. You're just disposing of a pre-CGT asset, which is not subject to CGT at all. So that's the first thing we want to say about the ownership period. The other thing is an ownership interest. So you must have some kind of ownership in that dwelling and land. So when it comes to land, essentially a legal or equitable interest will be an ownership interest. If the dwelling is not a flat or a home unit, it's also legal or equitable interest, or it can be a license or right to occupy. If it's a flat or a home unit, it might be things like a strata interest or what have you. Still legal and equitable, but it's also worth noting that in some states around Australia, you might come across clients who own or who live in an apartment, say, and that apartment is owned by a company. So, these are company titled residences. Well, the main residence exemption can still apply to those types of ownership structures. You see them sometimes occurring in some of the older inner city suburbs of Sydney. Places like Darling Point still have quite a few apartment buildings that are owned by companies. As an owner, you own shares in that company, which gives you exclusive use of a particular apartment. So, once you've established those principles, I think the next most important thing you need to do is check off that dwelling has been established as the main residence. Now, as a rule of thumb, your stay in the house should be at least 3 months. Certainly, you would not want to risk anything less than that. The longer, the better. Does it look at very practical day-to-day issues such as where the family live? Where are the personal belongings? Is the mail being delivered there? Yeah, your registration on the electoral roll is that at home, your utility usage. So, these are all very practical evidentiary things, which the ATO can quite easily get their hands on. So it's important to remember that just having the intention to construct or occupy a dwelling as your main residence is not going to be enough to make that ruling your main residence. You've got to physically move in and be there for, I would say, a safe minimum, at least 3 months, but the longer the better.